first, what we're going to do is we're starting something over the next couple of weeks. You know, there is currently a race for the Queens Borough President, and you know, Helen Marshall, who has long been the borough president, is a lovely woman. Her term is ending. She's retiring, and so it's an open seat, and there is an election with six candidates, and we are going to be speaking to each of the candidates, and we're very honored by our first guest in this series. It was the first one to accept our invitation. They chose the first slot, and I'm very happy to welcome to the show Mr. Tony Avella. Tony, Senator Avella, how are you, sir?
Good, great, and thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, it's a total privilege, and we're really glad to meet you. And so, how do you feel your chances are? How's the election going?
Well, I think our chances, and I'm speaking for the people who support me, are very good. I think people recognize the fact that I have the reputation of being an outspoken fighter for the communities that I represented in the city council and now in the state senate. And, you know, I believe, and I think the voters of Queens will agree, we need a voice for this borough. You know, Claire Shulman used to say, the former borough president used to say that Queens, if it was its own city, would be like the fifth largest city in the country. And I personally feel that we've never really gotten our fair share of city services, and we need somebody to fight for us. And I hope at the end of the day, the voters will think I'm that person. Awesome.
You know, I'm glad to hear you say that, because, you know, out in Queens very often we do feel, you know, I hear that a lot from our residents, that we feel like we're the forgotten stepchildren, and, you know, we're missing out on some vital services. During the last snowstorm, we saw that here. Out in Queens, and you know, that's sort of you know, what we're looking for, I think, in a borough president. So, you know, with that in mind, you know, what qualities and skill sets are you bringing to this job that, you know, that are going to be new to that position? You know, what are you going to inject into it?
Well, first of all, I think I interject a very independent nature. I think I have the reputation of being very outspoken and not being afraid to take on the mayor or the speaker, and now in the Senate, the governor, when I have to fight for my community. I'm not the typical politician. I've been independent throughout my entire career, and I think that's what we need. We need somebody who is not afraid to take on the powers to be, because, as you know, in the city of New York, the position of mayor, no matter who that is, has tremendous power to control, you know, the budget, to control the agencies, and we need, you know, not only somebody who can be like a public advocate for the borough, which I think it could be, but also somebody who understands the operations of each of the city agencies. Because besides being a state senator now, I was in the city council for 8 years. And before that, I worked for Ed Koch. I was his Queens representative. And I started out as a civic activist. I was on my own community board for 9 years. So I think I've gone through the entire system in government here in the city of New York and now in the state, and have the experience to know when a city agency isn't telling the truth, or when a city agency isn't doing the job it's supposed to be doing.
Very good. You know, listen. You know, we here in Woodhaven have had our struggles with some agencies, and you know, recently with sanitation, and you know, we see that there are some things lacking. You know, our organization are big supporters of the 311 system, but we're so frustrated sometimes by what we see as something that is close to being so really good, but it's right. So flawed. It's so flawed in so many ways that,
do you know, I tell people, don't even call 311 anymore. Call my office. Call a community board. 311, like you say, it's great in theory, and all the city needs to do is follow up on the 311 complaints. I mean, you make a complaint, sometimes you get switched directly to the agency, especially with the police department. Sometimes it's just the person sitting at a computer who then plugs in what the complaint is, and the computer tells the person answering the phone, here's the information you need to get, but there's no follow-up. Once it gets sent to the agency, there's absolutely no way to tell from the 311 system whether the complaint ever got addressed.
Yes.
And what they do is, with multiple complaints now, suppose somebody's complaining about a park condition. The particular park is dirty. After they take the first complaint, they stop taking 311 complaints. They don't take multiple complaints, so that, in effect, 100 people could be concerned about something, but the agency will only see it as one person complaining.
Mm-hmm.
So the 311 system can be a great thing if it's tweaked to the way it should be, where a person makes a complaint, you're given a reference number, and then it's sent to the agency, and the agency then gets back to the original complainant.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that I'm very proud of that I do as an elected official. Somebody calls my office, and I don't care whether they live in my district or not. I don't care whether it's a city, state, or federal issue. I do the runaround for that constituent. And then I will get back to them on what exactly happens. And then I'll ask for a follow-up. Say, hey, did the agency do what it said what it's told me to do? When I was a civic leader, before I was ever elected to public office, and I'm very proud of this, I came up with what I called at the time a civic checklist. It's just a list of all the problems that you might have in the neighborhood, like a pothole, park needs cleaned up, you need an all-way stop sign, or the street light is out, or you need better police protection. And all you had to do was check off the particular problem and fill in the location. And then people in my community would get it back to me as a civic leader, and I would forward it to the appropriate city agency. That was my first newsletter as a member of the city council. And within the first 3 months, I got 5,000 complaints.
Wow.
And people told me it was the first time an elected official had ever asked them, what is their problem? And that was my first newsletter as a member of the state senate. Every single voter in my district got this checklist. And if I'm elected borough president with the support of the borough, that would be my first newsletter as borough president, asking everybody in the borough, what's the problems on your own block? What works? What doesn't work? My favorite expression is nobody knows their block better than the people who live there. And it's about time government started paying attention to everybody.
Excellent. Very, very good. So let me ask you a different question here now. Part of the job of the borough president seems to me is you're kind of an ambassador to the world for our borough. So you're sitting in a sidewalk cafe in Italy, okay? You're having an Italian ice. By the way, what's your favorite flavor of Italian ice?
Oh, cherry.
Very good. Okay.
So the second one is lemon, of course.
All right. You're allowed two favorites. So then you got a young couple, and they tell you they're considering to visit Queens. They're not quite sure yet. What would you tell them? How would you seal the deal? What would you tell them about Queens?
Well, first of all, I would tell them we've got the best baseball team in the world, the New York Mets.
There we go. All right.
and then I would tell them, the best thing about Queens is its diversity. We are the single most diverse county in the entire country. And each neighborhood is unique. Woodhaven is unique. Bayside is unique. Glendale, you name a community, it has its own unique characters. You go down to, Flushing now, you have an Asian flavor. Those are the type of things that people like to go to and see, and that's one of the things that we should be promoting more. The borough president should be promoting more to involve tourists coming to the borough. We also have a great museum. We have the Museum of the Moving Image. We have just so many things. We have of course, Botanical Gardens in downtown Flushing. Mm-hmm. There are so many things we could tell prospective tourists about. One of the things that has always bothered me is the Manhattan-centric attitude that government has in this city, that everything revolves around Manhattan. Well, Queens, Brooklyn, the other boroughs, we have a lot to offer, and we need to highlight that.
Mm-hmm.
And we also need to highlight the diversity in this borough, and that's one of the things that I've tried to do as a member of the state senate, because I have a big district, to bring all the different groups that live in this borough together and celebrate the different cultures, the diversity, and that would even enhance this borough even greater than it already is.
Very good. I have a checklist of questions. I'm dying to get to all of them, So,
Sure.
but I have one here in particular because this is a big topic here in Woodhaven, and it's been a discussion for a while, and that is what to do with the long defunct Rockaway Beach branch of the Long Island Railroad. There's been two really publicized proposals: one to revive the railroad, and another one to create something called the Queensway, which is sort of a version of the High Line.
Right.
And then we have another group, which are residents, particularly here in Woodhaven, who live along that, who prefer to see it left alone, but maintained by the city. So I'm just wondering if you've had a chance to kind of review all three sides of this debate, and if you've been able to weigh in on it yet.
Well, I haven't weighed in on it yet because I'm a great believer in community-based planning. And which I don't think we really do now. And it goes back to what I said a couple of minutes ago about nobody knows their block better than the people who live there. I want to set up a system in this borough, if elected borough president, where each neighborhood gets to determine their own destiny. I'm tired of this very top-down approach. I want it from the bottom up. So as borough president, I would be listening to what the community, obviously all the proposals, and have the community say, here's what we think is the best proposal, and say to me, as if I'm elected the borough president, here's what we want you to implement. If we choose to leave it alone, just maintain it, that's fine. If you wanted to have a Highline version, or if you wanted to open the railroad, that's a decision that you and the neighboring communities that abut the old railroad should determine. We've seen too much of, in my opinion, I'm not a fan of Mike Bloomberg, of this top-down approach where everybody, seems to think that they know best rather than the people who live there, and I want to change that. So I'm really waiting to hear from the communities what they think is the best proposal. Okay,
fair enough, very good. I'd like to turn our attention to something that's big in the news this week, and this was, some bombshells, some arrests of elected officials, and one of the statements you came here said that, in your opinion, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Correct.
So that's frightening. Do you see how just these things have just rocked confidence of people, and do you really think is it much larger than this?
Yes.
Are we going to hear more? Okay.
No, I think we're going to hear more. It really is amazing to me how decisions are made each and every day, whether it's city government or state government, without really the best interests of the people at heart. Money moves the system, and the money comes from the big donors with very special interests that don't have our best interests at heart. And, the biggest donor in the New York City, and to a large extent in Albany, is the real estate industry. Mm-hmm. I've been a vocal critic for years. Until we eliminate money controlling the political system and thereby controlling government, we're always going to have these type of situations come up. From time to time, I see decisions made, when my days in the city council or now in the state senate, and they don't make sense. And you have to believe that, why was this done? And then you begin to realize somebody had influence behind the scenes, and something was done to benefit one individual or a company, and it was certainly not done for the right reasons. And Albany is pretty bad, and so is the city council and city government. There's no question that we continually elect people who are not really community-based people, who are not really interested in doing the right thing. And unfortunately, I am no longer surprised by any of this. I've said, to the press within the last week, I would be very happy if everybody went to the polls and voted everybody out of office, and I would be very happy to go if it meant all the other bad actors would go with me.
Let's say, yeah. It is. Like I said, people are rocked. They're discouraged. They've lost confidence. When Taco Bell had their problems, a number of years back, they had to take some emergency measures to try and restore that confidence. I'm kind of hopeful that something can be done here, but I'm not too hopeful.
I feel exactly the same way. I've tried to do some good government measures when I was in the city council and now in the Senate. One, I'm a great believer in term limits. I've voted against the mayor, when 29 of my colleagues in the city council voted to extend term limits. I thought that was a disgrace. I am the first elected representative in Albany to introduce term limits legislation in Albany for senators and assembly members. I've also tried to, I've introduced legislation for clean money, clean election to reduce the influence of the big donors, the pay-to-play, so to speak. And I've also introduced legislation to increase the ability of the IG's office and the Legislative Ethics Commission and the Joint Commission on Public Ethics to give them some real power to investigate actions like this and be able to subpoena elected officials. It's fascinating to me that the only real action that has been taken against corrupt politicians is by the feds. Where is the city and the state, investigative organizations? Why aren't they doing more? And it may be because of there's so much influence by the local elected officials that the local organizations are just powerless to take action, which is very unfortunate. But there are things we can do if we had the political willpower. People need to stand up. People in every neighborhood need to call their assembly member, their senator, the governor, and say, hey, listen, I want campaign finance reform. I want term limits. And if everybody spoke up, we could hopefully do something. I know I'm going to make a major effort with some of the good government groups when the legislature goes back in the next week and the next 2 weeks for real campaign finance reform. The money moves the system, and until we eliminate the influence of big money, we're never really going to change.
That's good to hear. I think we're on the same page there. So listen, I want to thank you so much for calling in. It's been a real pleasure, and I wish you the best of luck in the campaign. I know it's a long haul, but
I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to talk about the issues that concern all of us, and if any of your listeners want to get a hold of me, they can for the campaign. It's Tony Avella for Queens @gmail.com.
Terrific. Thanks again, sir. I appreciate you calling in, and hopefully maybe we'll get you out to one of our meetings one day.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime.
All right. Be good. Have a great weekend. All right. Well, I'm sorry.
When I was in, worked for Ed Koch, I used to go out to your meetings all the time. Maria Thompson and I were good friends.
Wow. Excellent. Okay, great. Well, yeah. We'll welcome you back.
Okay.
All right, friend. Have a great weekend. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye. All right, that's Senator Tony Avella, everyone, running for Queens Borough President, and